Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. Our special guest today is marketing and communications ninja, Ashley Mitchell. In her role as Senior Vice President of Marketing at Streamline Brands, Ashley sits on the executive leadership team and oversees marketing strategy for all lines of the business: consumer, franchise development, and mergers and acquisitions for the industry's largest franchisor and operator of swim schools, operating as Safe Splash, Safety Swim, Swimtastics, Swim Labs, and of course, Miller Swim School. Ashley has consistently been recognized as a leader in the franchise industry, most recently as a top franchise influencer in 2022. Wowza. Welcome, Ashley.
Hi,
Congratulations.
thanks for having me. Thank you. It's always
Yeah.
weird to hear things about yourself, Red.
I know, isn't it funny how that's just kind of warm and fuzzy when that comes up?
Yeah. Ashley, I don't know how many people have gotten into franchise by way of Disney, but I would love to hear that story.
Yeah, definitely. Like most people, I fell into franchising. I think, now there are definitely classes out there and things that you can take, but way back when there wasn't. And I think people just kind of fall into it. So I actually was starting school. I was going to school for engineering, which is funny to think about now because I am a marketing person through and through. But I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. My dad said, "You're good at math and science. You should be an engineer." So I went to college, went to my first intro to engineering class, got in the room, everybody opened up their computers and just stared at their computers. And I was looking around, I was like, we're not going to talk. So I decided then engineering wasn't for me. So then I went into marketing, ended up falling in love with marketing and started working for the Walt Disney Company after college. So there used to be a local marketing arm of the company. And so I grew up outside of Detroit and I oversaw all things marketing for Disney in Michigan and Northern Ohio. So we did about 300 events a year, anything that the company wanted to promote at the local level, from the parks, from the Disney Channel, any of that was all what our team handled. And so in 2014, I believe it was, Disney decided to close their local operations and move everything to be out of Burbank, California. I had no desire to move to Burbank, California. And we had great partners that we worked with locally that wanted to have a Disney experience work for them in whatever their local business was. I had the relationships with those partners from working with them over the years. So they came to me and asked, how can we fill this hole that Disney's leaving behind? So worked with them on what did those plans look like, did some freelancing. One of the people that I had worked with through Disney locally, she was going to be doing some freelance PR for a franchise company, didn't have the bandwidth to be able to handle it on her own, but knew that it was a great opportunity. So she came to me and asked if I wanted to help her with it. So I started helping her with that and then ended up going in-house with that brand and never looked back from franchising since.
Wow, very cool.
It is cool. So many people have these types of stories. It's never top of mind to go in franchising. Now, Disney has a wonderful reputation for customer service, customer experience. What the experience did you have within Disney that now translates into the franchise world?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is probably to your like you said, everybody knows who Disney is. Disney has a great reputation. You hear the word Disney, you know what to expect, and it's a high expectation. And there's a lot that goes into making that what everybody knows that it is. Everyone has a memory with Disney, but that memory is so personal to them that it's really how does Disney do that, right? How do they make that happen? And that's really what I learned when I was there, was what has to happen behind the scenes to take that brand, and you have all the brand standards and you have all of the things that you have to do because it's Disney that have to be done a certain way for a certain reason, but then you have to make it personal. And so you have to translate that into something that's going to resonate with someone. And that's really what we do every day in franchising. In franchising, the franchisor owns the brand, and there are brand standards and there are guidelines and things you need to do. But then you have the franchisees who are small business owners, and they have to make that business about their community, and they have to put their stamp on it, but put their stamp on it in a way that doesn't interfere with the brand standards. So there's that balance, and that's really what we did every day at Disney. And so I'm able to take that and translate that to help give that to our franchisees. How can we take what we do, personalize it for them so that they can then personalize that to own their neighborhood? Because that's what we tell our franchisees to do is, yes, we have the brands and we have the strong brand recognition and all of the things that we have behind it. But at the end of the day, the swim school industry is a neighborhood business. They have to own the neighborhood. And so how can they do that while still protecting the brands?
It really is franchising in a nutshell, isn't it? It's protecting the brand equity, but still having that local market, personal interaction with the individuals that are using our services. So it is a community neighborhood kind of business. That's what franchising really is. So it's interesting. What is it that you're currently doing to keep it personal, both from a franchisor perspective to our franchisee? And what are you doing currently that might be supporting the franchisee, keeping it personal at the consumer level?
Yeah. So from a franchisor to franchisee, we work really hard to maintain those relationships with our franchisees so that they know that we're in it for them. Like, we are in it together. It's a partnership. It is not us directing things at them. It's not them going off and, making their own decisions and having to figure out systems and processes. One doesn't work without the other, right? That's franchising 101. And we work really hard to maintain those relationships with our franchisees so that they feel that. We have an executive sponsor program, I guess I would call it, within our system, where every one of us is assigned to different franchisees, and we're their escalation point for good, bad, and indifferent. So they can, if they have a marketing issue, of course, they're going to come to me, but also I have, there might be somebody else that's dealing with something that they can't figure out an answer to, and they need to escalate that to somebody. It might not be marketing specific. They're still going to come to me if I am their executive sponsor. And so I'm there to help them troubleshoot things. We also visit them each year. So we, make sure that we do a personal visit with them to sit down and talk about their business, what's working, what's not. We do ongoing calls. We're just sharing information, making sure that they know that we care and understand that their business is going to be different. Their business in California might be very different from a business in New York. There are things that are going to be the same as far as systems and processes, but we want to make sure that they know that we understand that there's going to be things that are different for their specific business. So we keep those lines of communication open. And then same with them to consumer. We really rely on them to understand their neighborhood. I, tell them, it's my spiel in our marketing training is, we don't expect you to be a marketing expert. You didn't get into this to be a marketer. You got into this because you want to run a swim school. You need to understand your market. There are so many tools and resources we can give to you, but I'm not going to understand your neighborhood the way that you are. So you be part of that community, go out and build those relationships, and then come and tell us what's different about your community so we can help you craft the right message, the right place, all of those different things to make sure that you're speaking to your market and we're not trying to tell you to say something that doesn't make any sense in that market that you're in.
Wow. This puts a whole new spin on things for me because I have a marketing background, but I'm thinking back now to other individuals that Rebecca and I have interviewed, and I remember this topic coming up several times. So there's definitely, this ongoing concepts here about, yes, we have to stay true to the brand, yet at the same time, we need to be able to connect to the community. Right. And each community is slightly different. So it may not be a specific scenario, the same, repeated over and over. And like you just said, we're not telling you what to say because it may not resonate with your community. We have to make it relatable. I'm wondering, I just saw a little while ago on your LinkedIn profile that you are a recovering perfectionist. Is this where the recovering perfectionist comes in, or where does that come into play?
That comes in every aspect of my life. I tell everyone I'm not only type A, I'm type A positive. It is ridiculous. But I understand that about myself now. When I first started my career, I didn't understand that. Maybe I understood it about myself, but just thought everybody should be like that. So it was very much, if everything is not perfect and everything is not in its perfect place and set in the perfect way and executed perfectly, then we failed. And that's how I used to look at it. Over the years, I've gotten smarter a little bit, and realized that if you wait for everything to be perfect, one, you're never going to actually execute anything, because you can't. How do you pull the trigger on that? Because it's never going to be perfect. And then also, how do you keep it as close to perfect as you can, but let go of the reins a little bit? You have to be able to trust other people. Can't do everything yourself. Even if it is something is quote unquote perfect, it's probably not going to be perfect to me specifically, but other people are going to do things in a way that I wouldn't necessarily do them. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means that we look at things differently. And that's, I think, where the recovering perfectionist comes in. Is it still sometimes, creeps in there. And I have to remind myself that it doesn't have to be specifically the way that I want it. And that's in my professional life, my personal life, every aspect of my life.
Wow. I'm going to start calling myself a recovering perfectionist. I had severe OCD for many years. It's slowly easing up. Unfortunately, my children and grandchildren have inherited it, where everything has to be perfect and in order and whatever. But you're so right. It's what they call it, the 80-20 rule. If you can get it to 80%, you're going to have great success. But if you get obsessed over that last 20, and in the role that you are in, where you're cognizant of the overarching brand and the individual marketplace, there's no way there's perfection within that. It can't be a single cookie cutter. How we're decorating those cookies are different depending on that individual marketplace. Okay,
Right.
I heard a word in this interview that I don't think in my 2 years of doing this every week and more that I've ever heard. You used the word oscillation point. Did you say that?
Did I say that? Maybe, I don't know.
You did. I've never heard the word oscillation used. That you and your team are an oscillation point for franchisees. They come to you with whatever, and then as an oscillation point, I'm assuming you guide them in the right direction. But there's a personal relationship. They know you are the point person for those franchisees, and then someone else is the oscillation point for someone else. So I've never heard that word on this on any interview, so I want to acknowledge that. But it's a beautiful descriptor of being a point person for your franchisees, where they can come to you. So tell me, how do you nurture that relationship? How do you get to that personal level with your franchisees and also with your team?
Yeah, it's all about just recognizing that we're all the whole people, right? You're not just your work version and your personal version. They're the same person. Yes, there might be some little differences in how you act in your personal life versus how you act in professionally, but it's getting to know and understand the true totality of the person. And so, like, for our franchisees, there might be something that somebody does one day that makes me cringe. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why would they do that? That's totally outside of brand standards. But I know that it's not coming from a place of malice. They're not trying to do anything incorrectly or wrong. It's just what they're doing in that moment. And I also know and understand what else is going on. I'm like, they have a lot of things going on, like personally, professionally. I'm not going to just come down and be the hammer on them and say, you did this wrong in XYZ. I'm going to reach out and say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's figure out what the issue is. Let's figure out what you need. How can I solve the problem you're trying to solve with something that actually fits into what we're trying to do from a brand perspective? So it's really just that whole person. As far as our team, it's actually really funny. I never in a million years, if you would have asked me if I could live in a different state than the rest of my team and make it work. But that's what I'm doing. So I actually live in Pennsylvania now. I moved to Pennsylvania for my last job, and I'm from outside of Detroit originally. So I live in central Pennsylvania, and our company is headquartered in Denver, Colorado. And then the marketing team specifically is kind of sprinkled all over. So we have some people in Colorado, some in Denver, some up in the mountains, so they're a few hours away. There's somebody in New York, somebody in Arizona. As the team continues to grow, I'm sure we'll be in even more places, but it doesn't feel like we're spread apart. Our whole team has not met in person yet. Everyone is excited because we've been adding to the team. So not our whole team hasn't been around. And, we've been in COVID times where we haven't been getting together regardless. In October is our annual conference, and that'll be the first time that the marketing team all meets in person. But they don't feel like we haven't met. Like I've met everyone at this point, but it doesn't feel like everyone hasn't met each other. People make that comment all the time that they feel like they've hung out, met each other, know each other, because we're really intentional about it. So one thing we do that is just a fun thing to get everybody out of their house. We all do a lot of meetings like this, where we're in front of our computer, sitting at our
Zoom.
desk. Yes, we're all used to it at this point. But I was talking to somebody one day and we were talking about how he was like, I haven't left my house in 2 days. And I was like, I don't know that I have either. We should probably figure that out. So it spurred this every other week. Instead of our standard marketing team meeting, we do a marketing team walk where we do it on Teams. We schedule a Teams meeting like we would for anything else, but we log into it on our phones, turn our video off, put in our headphones, and everybody goes for a walk wherever they are in their neighborhood. One girl goes to a local park and walks around the lake. It gets us out from behind our computer. It gets us in the fresh air. It makes sure that everybody's not just sitting in front of the computer all day. And it also just gives us an opportunity to talk. So sometimes the conversation is work related. Somebody might be working on something and they want to brainstorm. So we'll chat about some things. Sometimes it's, what crazy thing did somebody's kid do last night? Or what TV shows is everyone watching? Or somebody will stumble upon something weird on the walk and turn their camera on to show everybody some animal that they see on the side of the road, like just random things. And it goes all over the place. It's, very shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing. But I think that has helped our team to just really get to know each other on that level where they reach out to each other. We don't have any communication barriers at all, even though we're all in different areas and different time zones. So it makes it easy for everybody to still feel like a team, even though we're not all in the same place.
That's so beautiful. If you think about it, if everyone was together working out of one main office, there would be that office chit chat. Individuals would be pairing off and going out to lunch, or certain days everybody would be going out to lunch together, or the small talk. You really don't realize until you're working remotely how much of that small talk, that chit chat, those little in-between opportunities to get to know each other, you really don't realize how much of that you're missing. So kudos to you and your team for coming up with such a great idea like that. So,
and especially no one knew each other before. It wasn't because we all had the experience, right? When we were working in February of 2020 and then March of 2020, everybody went home, but everyone knew each other. You would all work together in that setting previously. You already had those relationships. So it was easier to just have those conversations. Our team, no one knew each other before. We all came into this environment and living in different places. So we just have to be, had to figure out an interesting way to make it work. And it's working really well.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
So Tracy, you actually had a question, and I think.
Well, I was just going to ask, talk to us a little bit about some type of adversity or a problem or something that maybe you had to overcome that you learned something from that you could share with our listeners.
Yeah, I don't know that it would be necessarily a problem, but just something that has happened in my life that made me look at things a little bit differently and made me just realize, the things that I'm able to do. And, so I was living in Michigan, and I actually started a job in Pennsylvania, which is what brought me here. Actually, that was through building a relationship in the franchise community. And it was, we think you'd be great for this. Would you consider coming to this company? Decided to go ahead and take that leap, but this was pre-pandemic days, and you definitely had to move where the office was. So I moved to South Central Pennsylvania, not knowing really anyone or anything, leaving all of my, family, all of my close friends in Michigan, came here and really had to build a new like network and community here. At first, we used to joke when I first moved here. Luckily, I worked with amazing people and we became friends really fast. But we laughed about how I didn't have any non-work friends. So what the first time that I went out to like dinner with somebody that wasn't from our office, I was like, guys, I'm going out with a non-work friend. I would just like you guys to know that. And so, you know, built a community here, and just so much to the point that I decided to stay here and work for a company that's based in Colorado. And it has not affected my relationships with anyone at home. I still have all of those close relationships with everyone. So just figuring out how to navigate that and keep that, you know, keep that circle, that support circle as close and tight as it is, while being so far away and not being able to be like, oh, let's go grab dinner tomorrow.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a lesson here for me. It's funny when you said you're going out to lunch or going out with non-work friends. It's almost like you're cheating on someone, right? But it really is a lot to juggle, right? When you have family in Michigan, you got your community here in South Central Pennsylvania, and then your team all over the US and probably more at some point, where you're having to maintain those relationships. I would think this would require some great intentionality, that you really have to make these relationships priority, or they can become quickly sterile or distant or lacking some personal, you know, heart to heart kind of things.
Definitely.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I have a dear friend. His name is Stan Friedman. Actually, you might actually know him. He's been in the franchise space and very active with the IFA. And he has this process, and I've tried to adopt it, where if someone comes to mind, especially if he hasn't thought about them in a while, he instantly picks up the phone to connect. And it's really it created some beautiful relationships and rekindled some relationships. But how do you actually, because that's a lot, how do you divvy up your time? Do you have a day where it's okay, I'm only focused on this? How do you do that? Or is it just top of mind and you just do it?
Yeah, I think part of it is just like my personality and who I am, that it's top of mind. And I don't ever hesitate to reach out to anyone. I don't have a similar process that Stan has, but like formally, but now that you say that, I kind of do that. Like if I just like am thinking of someone, I will send them a text and just say,
Yeah.
hey, like you randomly crossed my mind today. How's life? That sort of thing. So that I do a little bit of that. And then also I just am I'm extremely extroverted and a people person. So talking to people and keeping in contact with people, it doesn't seem like a chore to me. I'm very intentional in what I do, but also now it's just like second nature, because I do it so much that it doesn't even cross my mind that I'm doing it. I'm sure that, you know, subconsciously there's some sort of process happening in my brain that makes me do it, but I've been doing it for so long that it just kind of happens.
Wow. That was a great question, Rebecca, about divvying up your time. And going back to the Stan Friedman scenario, you know, I've noticed that when somebody pops into my mind and I don't call them, like within a few days, they call me, which is kind of funny. It's almost like that law of attraction. Kind of getting back to the topic, one of the other times, like I love the fact that you reach out, Ashley, randomly when you think of people. One of the other times that I found that's a great time to connect is right before a special holiday, because out of all the plans that you're making and out of all the, you know, people that we're trying to connect and family, for us to reach out to somebody and say, hey, you know, so-and-so, I just want you to know I'm thinking of you and I wanted to wish you and your family a happy holiday. I've gotten such great feedback from just picking up the phone and making a phone call like that too. So, I guess one of the questions I have is, where can people reach you?
Yeah. So people can find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. You know, I'm on there pretty frequently. Could also shoot me an email. My email address is just amitchell@streamlinebrands.com. So questions, comments, anything, happy to take them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Easy peasy. Actually, for those people that are not naturally extroverted, right? Or they're of a generation like mine, where a phone call, an email, a text, the only purpose for it is business, right? It is to get an appointment, to get an answer, to make a decision, to convey, I'm 5 minutes late, or whatever it is.
Right.
For those that are not extroverted, that don't naturally, like you and Stan and Tracy, what advice would you have for them where it can be more fun, it can be more top of mind, they can see the benefit of it?
I would say if it wasn't something that comes natural to you, to schedule time to actually do something. If it's not on your calendar, you're not going to make time for it. Whatever you make time for, what you want to make time for. When people say I don't have enough time, it's that they didn't make the time. And so putting it on your calendar, setting aside that time, and then just thinking, maybe it's as clinical as writing a list of people. I haven't talked to these people. I'm going to reach out to 5 people every Friday morning. I'm going to reach out to 5 people, and you can come up with just a random question of that day. It doesn't have to be a how are you doing? Like that might get a little stale if you reach out to somebody and you're just constantly like, how are you? Especially if you're not somebody that easily has like flowing conversations. They'll say, I'm good. How are you? And then you'll say, I'm good. And it will end there. So maybe thinking of something else that can kind of keep the conversation flowing. And just from the value of it is understanding that those relationships, you never know where those relationships are going to lead and what they're going to, where it's going to make you end up. I mean, perfect example, I was working for Disney. A relationship got me into franchising. Another relationship moved me to Pennsylvania. The relationships I've made here have, caused me to build the community here. Other relationships are what got me to take the job that I have now in Colorado. A relationship got me talking to you guys today. Like that's what happens, like Cater. I love Cater. And she was like, I think that you should talk to Rebecca and Tracy. Like, that's why I'm talking to you. So you never know where these things are going to lead. And so I think people just have to understand that that's what makes the world go round. Everybody, the old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. There is some truth to that. It's not everything. You have to know some things too, but knowing people doesn't hurt.
That's such a great point, because when we hear people recount their life, it's usually first I moved here, then I moved here, then I did this. But you actually phrased it as though it was via the relationship.
Yes.
First, with a relationship, I moved here. Then with this relationship, I moved there. Your boss, you told us offline, has a special nickname for you or pertaining to networking. What is?
So I'm apparently an alpha networker. We do like a personality assessment before everybody starts our company. We work with a gentleman that does that for all of us, and we plot us all out on a chart and where everybody fits. Most of our team falls into more of like an executor, doer. There's a couple people that kind of float into the networking space. When I did my assessment, and it is the like most wild thing, it was the most random questions. It wasn't like I talked to him. It just asked me a bunch of different questions and to rank things and all of this stuff. And I was like, this is never going to come back with anything that makes any sense. Got the results back. My boss called me and he was like, you fell exactly where I thought you were going to based on just your personality and talking to you. You are like an ultra networker. Relationships are all that matters to you. Everything else will come along with it, but you're that person. He's like, I guarantee you at some point we will be in a meeting, you and I'll leave the meeting and I'll say, I thought that was great. And you'll say, well, this person's not bought in because they made this facial expression or did this, that, and whatever. And you'll know. And funny enough, about a year ago, we were it was actually like a Christmas party, and a conversation got brought up. And I looked over and saw someone. I was like, that person's not bought in. So I texted him and I was like, we have a problem over here. And he was like, I knew that would happen sometime. And it did.
That's great.
It's so true. We're at Zorkel, we're in the profiling business, and one of the assessments or sciences we use is a personality assessment. So I can fully relate to what you're talking about. here. But the other thing that you mentioned is actually a social and emotional intelligence, where you have incredible sensory acuity and you're able to pick up when something is incongruent or offline or in some way not meshing up with what's going on. You're able to read the face or the tone of voice or whatever it is. And this is a skill that we can learn, but it sounds like you've had it forever and it's highly, highly developed, which allows you then to read your team and build consensus, simply because on an intuitive level, you're picking it up. You're picking up where things are a little off and you're bringing them on board. So I love the combination of this crazy extrovert networker combined with someone that has really high emotional and social intelligence. It makes for a very great leader and someone that can influence and inspire others. So, and I wanted to point out, I know you've already pointed out, but it's a really important point, is that we do have a tendency to really focus on the relationships within our vertical or our business or whatever, and the importance of spreading out that network, in your community, other industries, other interests, whether it's, a sport or a book club or travel or whatever, but there's an importance, because we never know what those relationships will bring to us and what we can bring to that relationship. So this to me is an incredible topic, and I'm so excited, Ashley, that you allowed us to dig into your brain and look at you.
It's a scary place to be sometimes, but I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did. So to kind of wrap this up, if you were looking at a young woman who's either considering coming into franchising, or meaning as a prospective franchisee, a prospective business owner, or it is someone who's wanting to step in as an executive into the franchise space, is there any advice you would give them? Any pitfalls that they might need to look for? What would you suggest?
I would say advice-wise, and it's funny because it keeps going back. I feel like I keep going back to the same theme, but theme of what we're talking about is reaching out to other people and knowing that's the best part about franchising, is that you're not in it by yourself. You know, the saying, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. Mm-hmm. And that could not be more true in the franchise space in all facets. So getting into, if you're coming in and wanting to be a franchisee, making sure that you're in a system that is a well-operated system, that the franchisees are all talking to each other. That's so important. The franchisees don't just talk to the franchisor. You don't want that. You want them talking to each other so that they're sharing best practices, and they can give, those veteran franchisees can give you a perspective that I've never run a swim school. I'm never going to run a swim school. They need to talk to somebody that is in there and that's done this and said, oh, well, during my construction process, this. I can tell them those stories, but they're not my stories to tell. So, making sure that you are, if you're coming in as a franchisee, getting into a system that the community talks to each other and supports each other and wants to help each other, understanding that the growth and the success of every single franchisee helps the system as a whole. And so that's something that's super important. If I was looking to become a franchisee, that I would look for that in a community. If you're coming in and trying to be on the franchisor side, there are so many resources and people and places that you can lean into, all of the different committees that the IFA has. And even if you're not formally on a committee because you don't know how to get onto a committee or you don't have the time to commit to do that, just talking to people, just, forming your own little groups. When I first started in franchising, at the time, franchising was more focused around like the QSR business, and it was more transactional. And that didn't, they didn't have necessarily the same problems that I was having in more of a membership-based, family-oriented business. So we formed a group collectively of a bunch of different people that worked in franchising in more of a kid dog membership space. And at the time it was, we formed this little franchise marketing super group. It was called Gloff. I cannot take credit for that name. That goes to Amy Harris from Primrose. Happened to be all women. And so it was Gorgeous Ladies of Franchising. And so we formed this group and we would talk, at first quarterly, send some emails, do all of that. I since don't have anything to do with that anymore, but have the relationships with those people that I still, if I have a question or I need something, I'm like, oh, what does Primrose do? I'll call Amy and be like, hey, let's have a conversation about this. Same thing, with anybody else that was in that group. I will just call them and be like, how did you handle X, Y, and Z? Or, we're looking at new vendor partners. Do you guys work with so-and-so? Do you like them? Do you not? And I know I'll get a real answer from them on what's working and what's not and what they like, because we've built that relationship. So people tell people so much and share so freely in franchising. It is so refreshing. You don't find that in every industry. I can call someone that I've never even met before and ask them what they're doing, and they likely will tell me. They're not going to give away their trade secrets, of course, but they're going to, be very open about what they're doing, what's working, what's not, problems they have, all of that. And so if you're coming into it, most people probably don't realize that franchising is like that, because most industries aren't. Like most business industries don't have that free sharing of information. So if you've not worked in franchising before coming into it, my biggest piece of advice would be just to reach out and talk to people. Don't be afraid to, because they're going to be more than willing to share.
And this is why once someone stumbles into franchising, they never leave.
Mm-hmm.
It is a community that freely shares information, freely shares connections, and truly cares about one another's success. It is hands down the biggest family I have ever been a part of. I mean, I could travel all over the world and couch surf and never have to pay for a hotel room because of the connections and relationships. And Ashley, you are probably the same. Not that I would couch surf, but if I had to.
You're welcome. You're welcome to. If you ever find yourself in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
There you go. And you can come stay with me also. So Tracy, any final questions, final thoughts from you?
I love this whole concept of community and how it relates to brand integrity, right? You have the brand integrity, and then you have how you're also personalizing it for the community. That to me stood out. I think you delivered so much value for our listeners here today, Ashley. And we really, truly appreciate you showing up and sharing all that you did. That's really it. Oh, one last thought is that you're actually like the second or third marketer who we interviewed who started out in engineering.
That's true.
That's funny.
Dawn Abamonte started out in engineering. So it's so funny to me.
That's really funny. I did not know that about her. I will definitely, we see each other. Yeah, I'll let her know. I'll talk to her about when she made that switch.
See what we uncover on the Franchise Women podcast, where passion and purpose collide.
Exactly. So I want to take a moment and thank Kato Danford. She is a professional networker. We actually interviewed her in February with the idea of love, because if there's anyone that spreads love, it's Kato Danford, and does everything, Ashley, that you talked about. And I would not have met you had it not been for Kato. And she does exactly what you were talking about. She sets up regular meetings with me, and we don't talk business. We talk personal. We talk about, Rebecca, you need to get out there and start dating again. And she talks to me about her music, and we know each other intimately. We were strangers before. And I introduce her to people. She introduces me to people. She's a classic example. Ashley, you're a classic example of what you live and breathe, which is how to take things to a personal level and build those relationships. We do not know what that investment in another person is going to mean to them or to us. We're sowing into them and they're sowing into us. And I can promise you 30 years in franchising, whether you're choosing to be a franchisee or come in as a corporate, genius, I can tell you it will be a rewarding career, whichever you choose. So thank you, Cater, for introducing us to Ashley. And Ashley, thank you for sharing your heart and some really solid tips of how to do this consciously.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for having me. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed getting to know you both. Again, shocking because I like to get to know people, but I'm sure our paths will cross again and we'll stay in contact. So,
all right. And thank you to the rest of you that are listening in to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and what we're talking about today, relationships are forged. We'll see you next week on another episode.